my beautiful friends. My name is Kim, and I hope you are having a fabulous day today. If you are interested in true crime like I am, I hope that you'd consider hitting that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about Dylan Groves. Baby Dylan was only 4 months old when his life was taken in one of the worst ways I've ever heard. This story is extremely horrific because little Dylan was overlooked and injured by those meant to love and protect him. So let's talk about Dylan. But first, a word from our sponsor. When I get questions about my 46-year-old skin, my short answer will always be skincare and vitamins. This is why Care of is my daily vitamin and supplement service that delivers directly to my doorstep. Taking care of your inside shows on the outside. Here is the box, the individual packs it comes in, and when you pull out your daily one, it is so adorable. They make it a little bit special by personalizing it. As a bonus, they always have like a challenge, a saying, a fun fact. And this one reads, every 10 days, your taste buds are regenerated. Care of makes taking your vitamins easy and fun. In my customized pack, I take iron, which is good for vegetarians, vitamin D for my old bones and immune health, veggie omega for heart health, and rhodiola for stress and mood. I take a probiotic blend also for immune health and gut health. It sounds like it's more than what it is. If you are thinking, Kim, I drink 3 glasses of milk a day, I don't need vitamin D. What I recommend is you take their online quiz and they do all the work for you. They customize it to fit you. The online quiz was very useful for me because I was introduced to the chia flax blend, which is an amazing product. And I would have never known about it unless Care of suggested it to me. They ask questions about your lifestyle, health, and your goals. Make your health a priority this year and start with Care of by clicking the link in the description box to start their online quiz and use my promo code FLOWER50 to receive 50% off your first month. Thanks to Care of and thanks to you guys for listening and supporting my sponsorships on the channel. Warning, today we are going to be talking about another very crimey child case. If you are sensitive to said topic, I will see you in my next one. Dylan James Groves was born on January 10, 2019 to his parents Daniel and Jessica Groves. Dylan would have a short but eventful life starting with birth. When Daniel and Jessica arrived at Southern Ohio Medical Center in the early morning hours of January 10th, the nurses on the maternity ward noticed something was off with the couple. Jessica was clearly pregnant and in labor, but other than saying it's coming, she was refusing to answer any of their questions. Eventually, she provided her name, but would not answer any other questions about her pregnancy. She would not tell the nurses how far along she was, if she had received prenatal care, nothing. The nurses thought she was on something, so they assured her they were only asking these questions so they could care for her and the new baby. They asked for a little background, no answer. They asked for a urine sample so they could find out what drugs she was taking, again, stating they were only wanting to help her and the baby, and she declined. She was described by the nurses as flat, disconnected, and uncooperative.
We started asking her questions such as how many weeks she was, if this was her first baby, who was her physician, had she had any complications with the pregnancy, and she did not answer any of our questions.
You may be wondering, well, what about Daniel the father? Oh, he was there, also sitting in silence, not answering their questions. Could you imagine how awkward that must have been for the nurse? The maternity nurses I've met are always super bubbly and excited with you and ask simple questions. How many weeks are you, hun? And Jessica just gives them the stink eye and doesn't answer? So weird. When they got Jessica in the room so she could start to deliver, Daniel finally provided the information that they had done heroin 2 days ago and that she kept missing prenatal appointments because she was always too high. The nurses said it looked like Daniel wanted to talk to say more about his wife of 20 years, but she was holding him back. The nurses also said Jessica did not seem to be in any pain. Although the baby was almost out, she was not given any pain medication because they didn't know what drugs she was already taking. So, roughly 20 minutes later, Dylan was born. He was 5 pounds, 10 ounces. The nurses had contacted the nursery staff before his birth so they would be ready for anything, not knowing what baby Dylan would probably need help with after birth because they weren't giving him any information. They were not wrong. When he was born, he needed oxygen to help him breathe so he could be removed to go to the nursery. In the nursery, they got a urine sample to test for substances and sent a test sample of the umbilical cord out to the lab as well. While in the nursery, they did a Finnegan test on him, which helped them see how bad Dylan's withdrawal symptoms were. The nurses in the nursery said they took Dylan to Jessica's room one time and she had no interest in seeing him.
To your knowledge, was there any request from the mother to have her baby back in her room or hold the baby?
Not to my knowledge.
She did not hold him. She said, put him over there. They also said that Daniel did come up to the nursery once to see how Dylan was, and they testified he seemed to be on substances then as well. Daniel told a nurse that when Jessica found out she was pregnant, she had been using heroin. She continued using just a bit to keep the withdrawal symptoms from happening, he would say. His umbilical cord was tested and it shows every substance the mom used from 20 weeks gestation on. It was confirmed positive for amphetamines, methamphetamines, fentanyl, opiates, and morphine. What wasn't in his system is the shorter list, it seems. Jessica was itching to leave, so she was discharged from the hospital after 2 days. Baby Dylan was kept in the hospital for several days so he could be monitored for his drug withdrawals. While he was kept those days, neither mom or dad came to see him or check on his condition at all. When Dylan was ready to be discharged, the social workers at the hospital called DCF and asked what their plan was for Dylan. According to the hospital social worker, because both Dylan and mom tested positive for substances at birth, it is cause for automatic removal from the home. When the hospital spoke to DCF, their plan was to send baby Dylan home with Daniel if he could pass a drug test and promised Jessica would stay elsewhere. The hospital felt because the mom and dad had been married for 20 years, Jessica would not stay out of that house. It's just not going to happen. And they did not think it was a good plan and refused to do it. They basically said, come up with a different plan or we'll go get a court order from a judge to keep baby Dylan until they do. DCF placed baby Dylan with a foster mom, Andrea Bowling, who had already raised children of her own and had fostered kids before. Andrea was called that Friday and asked if she could take in Dylan that day. Andrea started calling all of her friends. She was letting them know she was picking up a baby and would need things. And, her friends were amazing. She had been teaching school at the time. She let the school know that she would need a couple weeks off and maybe more. When she got to the hospital, she had to go through a class on how to care for a newborn in withdrawal. The foster mom, Andrea, took the class, no complaints. What's sad is this class is a regular occurring class, not just set up for this specific circumstance. So she picked up Dylan, and by the time she got home, she had everything she needed, and it was already set up for her. She had amazing friends that really came through when she needed them. She had a crib, a bouncy, diapers, blankets, clothes, everything for a newborn. Andrea said the moment she saw Dylan, she fell in love with him. On the stand, Andrea described Dylan as a sweet baby who was definitely going through withdrawals.
From the moment I picked up Dylan from the hospital, I loved him.
He would randomly break out into sweats covering his whole body. His arms, legs would shake, and he would need to be held all the time when he was awake. Andrea did not mind that. She held him all day long. Andrea said she had taken 12 days off so far, and she was willing to take as many more days as it was needed. Jessica and Dylan, the parents, arranged a visit with Dylan and Andrea at the social services office. Andrea said she didn't want to hover, so she gave them the time that they needed with baby Dylan. She did notice that Jessica seemed to be very excitable. She seemed to be on substances. She was just not being normal. She was very animated. After they left, she let DCF know it seemed one or both of them were on something. During this, the state of Ohio DCF had gone to court to get custody of Dylan and supervisory custody of the couple's 14-year-old son. They had meetings with Daniel and Jessica and stated Daniel needed to sign a form stating Jessica would not be staying in the house. These magical forms. Jessica needed to complete a drug and alcohol assessment, submit weekly contact and drug treatments, remain outside the home unless supervised, and submit to supervised visits. After 12 days, Andrea, the foster mom, got a call stating DCF was going to put Dylan in the care of his father. She cautioned them. She asked them to just give the parents a little bit more time. Her concern was completely ignored. On January 25th, there was a family team meeting at the social services office. The Groves, Andrea, and the caseworker were all there. At the meeting, Daniel told the caseworker that he had a 6-month leave from his job at Rural King, basically pointing out he has time to care for Dylan. Child Services told both parents they had to complete a drug and alcohol assessment, participate in therapy, and comply with court orders. When the meeting ended, the foster mom told the caseworker that she thought Daniel was loopy and on substances. The caseworker explained that because he had no violent criminal history and no prior child service involvements, and he could pass a drug test, that Dylan was going to be returned to his care. Interestingly, Daniel did pass the drug screen, but no one observed him while doing this drug screen. So on January 28th, just under 2 weeks after being placed in foster care and 18 days old, Dylan was reunited with his terrible parents. Andrea gave them diapers, supplies, and a letter with her contact information stating that they can call for help from her anytime. Unfortunately, they would never call. After he left, she called Child Services again about Daniel, stating he seemed to be on something. I don't know how many times she told them he doesn't seem right, but what can they do? He's passing these drug tests. One of the programs offered to the new parents is called Help Me Grow. This was offered to the Groves, but the worker from the program could never reach them to start them in this program. The caseworker saw Dylan for the first time in a home visit on February 4th. She said he was quiet, he had no injuries. She saw Jessica holding him and reminded her to continue with her outpatient rehab. The caseworker couldn't get in touch with the Groves during the rest of that month. This would become normal in this case. She did another home visit in February and once again stated Dylan seemed clean, quiet, displayed no visible injuries. He weighed 8 pounds 9 ounces. But that was according to the parents. But she never held Dylan or took his clothes off to check for injuries, which was required because Child Services had legal guardianship of Dylan at this time. Dylan also said Jessica was only there during the day to bond with Dylan, but the caseworker couldn't verify this. At the time of the next monthly visit, Daniel called the caseworker and said he was in Canton, Ohio, visiting his ill father, so he needed to reschedule. At the time of the next visit, no one was home. Just as she pulled away, Daniel left her a voicemail saying he was still in Canton. On March 27th, juvenile court decided custody of Dylan should stay with Child Services. However, he was physically staying in the custody of Daniel. Whoever made this decision, would they have left their own kids in the custody of Daniel? On March 28th, the caseworker visited the home once again. Jessica held Dylan the whole time. The caseworker wrote that Dylan was healthy and injury-free. On April 3rd, the Groves contacted his caseworker by text again and stated that they were in Canton again and their car had broken down. They never showed up for their juvenile court and they were not home for their monthly visit. On April 17th, the caseworker was unable again to contact them and let them know that Dylan's guardian wanted to come to the home. At this point, because Dylan had texted the caseworker from 4 different phone numbers, she tried all the numbers, no response. The caseworker also learned that Jessica was not doing her individual or group therapy, which was part of her visits with Dylan, was one of the contingencies as part of her visits to see Dylan. The county sheriff, Captain John Murphy, visited the Groves home on May 20th, 2019 and attempted to locate Dylan, but the driveway had been cabled off with motion detectors. Murphy did hear dogs inside the mobile home, but didn't see anybody. When Murphy began to leave, he spoke to the neighbor who told him the Groves leave early in the morning and they come back late at night, and that they were usually on a 4-wheeler riding up and down the roadway. During this conversation, Murphy observed Groves riding up on a 4-wheeler. The sergeant did attempt to stop them, but they took off in a field. And so there was this chase, and then the Groves hit the woods, and so the sergeant wasn't able to pursue them any further. Between April 19th through the 24th, the caseworker tried to reach Dylan to see Dylan multiple times. She even talked to their teenage son at school, who said Dylan was okay. When she asked about his ill grandpa, because that's why they were in Canton, he said, "Who's that?" On April 24th, they removed the older son from high school and took custody of him. Just after that, the caseworker got a text from Daniel. He was very upset when his son didn't get off the bus, and the school told him that social services took him. And he continued to say social services was going to put him through hell when he wasn't even involved with baby Dylan. She told him to bring Dylan and all of his clothes and his personal items to social services the next day on April 25th. Daniel agreed that he would. He did not. The caseworker kept getting excuses from Daniel as to why he couldn't meet her. On April 30th, the caseworker filed a missing persons report. The caseworker made 6 more visits to the home between April 30th and June 7th. She said sometimes all the vehicles were there and she could tell someone was either home or had been home, but they did not come to the door. Jessica and Daniel were arrested on June 10th, but they didn't make it easy. Police and SWAT units surrounded their trailer and used a loudspeaker for them to come out. You have to keep in mind the sheriff's office had been out to the resident several times, but the couple would not answer the door. But now that they had a search warrant and 2 arrest warrants, eventually Jessica came to the door wearing only her shirt and underwear, yelling that child services had already taken baby Dylan months ago and that they should just leave them alone. Of course, this was untrue, and the police knew, as child services were the ones that filed the missing persons report on Dylan. They arrested Jessica and put her in the police car. Daniel, though, he wouldn't come out of the house. Because the area was rural and the layout of the trailer, they were afraid Daniel could be in there with guns, awaiting to ambush. So they finally sent in a robot. Daniel surrendered to the robot after a 6-hour standoff. On the stand, the caseworker talks about the fact that she did not issue an Amber Alert because a supervisor believed that if an Amber Alert goes out, it would give a bad reputation for the agency because we lost a child. It did come out later in trial that 2 doctors had seen Dylan very shortly after birth, and he was considered healthy and thriving. No further appointments were kept. On trial, Jessica's therapist stated she tried to contact the social services on February 14th, 15th, 22nd, 27th, March 1st, 2nd, 6 times to let them know that Jessica was not attending therapy or drug screens. Also, the last time they saw her, they thought that she was on substances. They were trying to speak out, let Children's Services know that Jessica was not complying. So after Jessica and Daniel were arrested, they both stated that the state had already taken both of their children, both the older one and Dylan. This, of course, was not true. Everybody knew it. Detective Jody Conkle was the officer to interview both parents. When she interviewed Jessica, she was described as very standoffish, cold, didn't really want to talk to her, kind of annoyed. So she spoke to Daniel. When she spoke to Daniel, he told her he found baby Dylan dead in his pack and play on March 28th and that they had buried him. He agrees to take them to wherever he is buried. The next day, the detectives as well as Daniel went out to this large wooded area behind his home. He took them to a few places, but stated he couldn't remember where the body was. Then Detective Jody lets Jessica and Daniel visit in an interrogation room. This room has highly sensitive microphones, so everything they're saying is picked up, although they're whispering, it's not working. Daniel would say, when they took me out there yesterday, wanted me to take them where he was at, I took them to some bullshit place because don't tell them where he is because if they find the body. Jessica responds, but it's not audible. And then Daniel says, if they find his body and if they find out where he had a broken leg and shit, we're fucked. It doesn't matter. Jessica, they don't know where he's at. I don't know where he's at. After this exchange, Jessica was taken back to her cell and the detective met with Daniel. Detective Jody tells Daniel that she knows he lied. He led them on a wild goose chase and he needed to tell the truth. Put his baby to rest.
Here's the thing is, by us not finding that baby, you're just making it worse for you. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, if you're telling me, and you told me that, and at this point I don't know if you're telling me the truth about that. I do know you lied. Let's get him where he needs to be. I told you all about respect, and you're going to have to face a jury and a judge. You know what I'm saying? Do the right thing.
So eventually, Daniel does take Detective Jody out to where Dylan was. Dylan was at the bottom of a 30-foot well. In efforts to retrieve Dylan from this 30-foot well, they needed the help of the fire department. I should state first, the firefighters that did this job were not told what they were pulling out of the well. This area was very hilly and in the back of the woods. When the firefighters got there, they brought a small truck to the well. They did try to drain it, but it wasn't working very well because it was a spring-fed well. So the firefighters got lines with a hook at the end and tried to bring the item, because they don't know what it is, up. One of the firefighters said later that when the item, they were very happy at first. They were achieving what they came to do. No one had told them what it was, so they were excited, like we did a good job. Then as the water drained out of these 2 milk crates held together by chains and padlocks, the smell of decomp hit the air, and then they knew. It was a very sad moment for all.
Once we got it out and set it down, then I think everybody kind of comes to the realization that, you know, what was in there, and that, you know, this was loss of a human life, and we just kind of all walked away and tried to, you know, regain our composure.
So the milk crates were taken as they were to the medical examiner. Once she removed the wires, ropes, chains, 3 padlocks, 12 zip ties, and 8 metal wires, the 2 crates came apart. Inside there was 18 large heavy rocks and baby Dylan's body. He had been wrapped multiple times in plastic and also was wrapped with an iron anchor type device. Dr. Brown, the medical examiner, testified that Dylan's body had 2 skull fractures that did not occur at the same time, 2 bruises on the right side of his chest and left leg, a laceration on his left arm, fractures on his left upper arm bone, and fractures in the bones in the left forearm as well. And one of his ribs was an old healing fracture, and the same thing on the rib next to it. The doctor also said the rib fractures didn't occur at the same time as the other fractures, so multiple fractures that happened at different moments. The specific cause of death couldn't be determined due to the state of Dylan's body, but knew it was homicide. The doctor did believe the fractures showed at least 3 different traumas. A toxicology report detected that Dylan had substances in his liver. Also during the trial, Daniel and Jessica's 15-year-old son testified and found out about his mother's pregnancy somewhere around November 2018. Before CPS removed him from the home, he observed bruises and swelling on Dylan's head, and when he asked his parents what happened, they said a dream catcher had fell on Dylan and got stuck on his arm, and a tiny stone hit him on the head, bruising him. The prosecution clearly did not believe this story that he had been told, considering the injuries and bruises to Dylan were much more than a dream catcher. The older son also testified that every couple of months he provided his urine to his father both before and after Dylan's birth. Remember all those urine tests he passed? The foster mom telling them he didn't seem sober? Well, he wasn't. Now, to be clear, in most cases where a parent or both parents are charged with the crime of their dependents, do not take the stand. Actually, in most cases, they call very few witnesses. In some instances, they will call a doctor to speak to their state of mind and that kind of thing. But in this case, both mom and dad took the stand. Both Daniel and Jessica, yep, they got up on the stand. Now, although they were charged and tried together, they had separate attorneys because they had very different defenses. So first up was Jessica, the mom, a term I use loosely. The entire point of the trial was for Jessica to save her husband, Daniel. So her lawyer asked her these very few leading questions.
Ms. Groves, I know that you're claiming that you don't remember a lot of the details in this situation. However, do you recall whether or not Daniel Groves participated in the actions that caused Dylan's death?
No, he did not.
Okay. Did he in any way cause Dylan's death?
No.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, I do not like this woman, but her attorney may have wanted to prepare her a bit better for what was about to come next. It was a complete train wreck, which was cross-examination by the prosecution led by Julie Cook Hutchinson. She demolished her. She started by asking Jessica to explain to the jury how she killed Dylan. Jessica said it was an accident. This would be how these two got into a heated screaming match. Yes, you heard me right. The prosecutor kept asking, how did you cause the rib fracture?
How is it your husband didn't know you were doped up the whole time you were pregnant?
Because I kept it a secret.
Why didn't you tell Jody Kunkel there were all these accidents that killed my baby?
Because I was scared.
Of what?
Everything.
What's everything? You were scared of what?
Of admitting the truth.
Well, tell the jury what the truth is.
I
You
don't
didn't tell Detective Kunkel what the truth was. You didn't tell your son what the truth was. Tell this jury what the truth is.
I don't remember it all.
And you lied to your son.
Yes, I did.
And you lied to Detective Kunkel.
Yes, I did.
But you want this jury to believe you just don't remember and you're not lying to them.
This prosecutor is now all fired up because Jessica's on the witness stand by choice. She could have declined, like most all other horrible people we cover do, but she didn't, and she is not answering the questions, wasting everyone's time with her fake crying with no tears. You have to wonder, did her attorney not explain to her that she was basically shark bait up there? Did he not tell her she had to answer every question they asked? Apparently not. Maybe her attorney didn't like her either. More than once, the judge had to instruct her that because she chose to testify in her own defense and take the stand, she is subject to cross-examination and had to answer the state's questions.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, does this look like panic to you? Does it? A chain, 3 padlocks, 12 zip ties, 8 wire ties, 18 rocks, 6 layers of plastic and duct tape. Does this look like panic? I submit to you it looks like extreme planning.
Jessica would just bury her face in her hands and cry. They took a break. It didn't help. When they came back, all she wanted to say was she didn't remember how she injured Dylan. Daniel Groves did take the stand, but basically all he said is he didn't know. He didn't see anything. He tried to say he found out on the car ride to the hospital while in labor that Jessica had been doing drugs during her pregnancy and hadn't been going to prenatal appointments. He didn't know she continued to use drugs after Dylan came home or that she was injuring Dylan. He only helped cover up after Dylan died, he would say. He also would go on to say that he only started doing drugs the day after Dylan died. Really? The couple were charged with aggravated murder, kidnapping. This is because Dylan was in the custody of child services, child endangerment, tampering with evidence, interference of custody because child services had custody, gross abuse of a corpse, felonious assault. The jury deliberated for over 2 hours. Jessica was found guilty on all counts. Daniel was found guilty on all but aggravated murder. Jessica was sentenced to life without parole. Daniel was sentenced to 47 years to life on all of his charges combined. They were convicted on what would have been baby Dylan's first birthday, and I have to say that is just poetic. After baby Dylan's death and the trial concluded, there were still many people left in pain. Dylan's case brought national attention to Ohio's opioid epidemic and the state's family reunification process. Laura Fuller stepped down as the director of the county's child services after an investigation determined that the agency had mishandled Dylan's case. State Senator Terry Johnson recently introduced the Senate Bill 216, also known as the Dillon's Law, which would establish requirements that parents of an infant who had been exposed to substance abuse must meet before reunited. Under the bill, parents of substance-exposed infants must complete a course on caring for a newborn experiencing alcohol or drug withdrawal, complete an inpatient rehabilitation program, and undergo and be approved through home study before being reunited with the child. Upon reunification, parents would also be required to complete several requirements, including a visit from a caseworker once a month for 3 months, regular monthly examinations by healthcare professionals, and regular alcohol and drug testing. This legislation was assigned to the Ohio Senate Judiciary Committee and received its third hearing on February 8, 2022. There's no word yet, but we are keeping our fingers crossed. If passed, this legislation has a real chance at helping children like baby Dylan. Jessica and Daniel are vile humans that are in the right place. Daniel should have received the same sentence because he knew. He knew exactly what the baby was going through. He stood by Jessica to the bitter end, and it's disgusting. I hate them both, and I hope they have to sleep with one eye open for the rest of their lives. You guys, let me know your thoughts. Leave a blue heart for baby Dylan. I chose blue from this cute onesie he has on. He was so little and adorable. I see why the foster mom, Andrea, fell in love with this little boy. Thanks so much to Care Of for sponsoring today's video. As well, I want to thank all my channel members who continue to support me. Their names are on this screen. If you would like early access to new videos or decide the cases I cover next, you could do so by hitting the join button. I also have a Patreon if you are interested. Well, if you guys have made it to the end, you guys are rock stars and I love you to death. There are more true crime stories in my Crimey Stories playlist if you would like to check them out. But either way, stay safe, my loves, and remember, if you see something, say something. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye.